Morning, Bob.
How you doing today?
Good.
So listen, Al, your scissor lift's going to be down for about an hour. Mechanics need to replace some of the hose fittings. According to the cross shift, it was leaking.
Yeah, and it's about bloody time, too, let me tell you. That thing's been leaking like a pair of baby soggy diapers for the last 2 days now.
Well, if it leaks again, don't work with it. Call a mechanic and get it fixed. Now, once that scissor lift's ready to go, I'd like you and Charlie to bolt and screen 51 stope. What I'd like you two to do in the meantime is to go into 461 drift, wash down, and check the condition of the vent tubing. Cross shift blasted in there last night. Eddie will be in there as soon as he's finished mucking in the stope.
Do you know if there's any more vent tubing in the storage?
Yeah, there should be a few lengths of tubing down there. And don't forget, if you have to change the last piece, make sure that fan is locked out first. Also, fellas, keep a close eye on the back in there. We're getting close to the dike in that drift, and you know what that stuff's like.
Yeah, tell me about it. The last time we ran onto dike, it rained down like hatchets. Could slice your boot wide open if you're not careful.
Well, I don't think we're that close to it yet, but be extra careful. Make sure it's well scaled.
What about a vehicle? Is there something we can drive while ours is in the shop?
You can take number 37 scissor lift. Should be parked just outside the lunchroom. Well, okay, fellas, I'll see you in there first thing. I want to check that round out myself. Be careful.
I'm telling you, Bob, I don't know what you'd do without me and me partner. You'd be closing this place down, let me tell you. All right, you young pup, let's get going now. We got a keys to catch in 10 minutes. Don't forget to get a new bit out there, too, that we're using. Right.
You know, one of the most important responsibilities that comes with this job is encouraging everyone to develop good safety habits in order to prevent accidents. There's really no secret to developing good safety habits. All you have to do is stay alert, learn to identify and control hazards, follow proper procedures, and never needlessly put yourself at risk. There's no reason to. Why? Because there's no single job we do that's so important that we can't take the time to do the job safely. Developing good safety habits is all about adopting the right attitudes and behaviors and putting them into practice every time we pick up a scaling bar, operate a piece of machinery, or do anything. And you know, over the years I've discovered one method in particular that helps us develop good habits and stay safe. It's called the 5-point safety system. You've probably heard of it. It's a simple approach to safety that's been around for a long time. And it's got an excellent track record of preventing accidents when properly used. Basically, the 5-point safety system is a plan. It's a plan for checking your workplace conditions and equipment. And it's a plan for helping us concentrate on getting the job done safely without putting ourselves at risk of getting hurt. On our crew, we've gotten into the habit of using the 5-point safety system every day. What you're about to see is a system being used at the beginning of a shift, when the risk of accidents is often at its highest.
You just stay in there. You probably stayed there till it closed.
5 minutes after you.
Ah, yeah, I know it helps. I don't know. Let's get the lead out. We'll find out. All right, Charlie, if you'd like to take that rope down, I'm going to check the vent tubing for any holes. Okay.
The first step in the 5-point safety system is to check the entrance and travel way into your workplace. The first length of tubing should be free of holes and tears and tightly secured to the fan to prevent air loss to the heading. The screen should be in good condition and completely covering the intake side of the fan. If blasting operations have been conducted, the handle on the blasting box must be moved to the off position. Before leaving, a quick check of the walls and back for loose is also required. Always be sure any unsafe conditions are corrected before proceeding any further. As you proceed along the travel way to your workplace, continue to be on the lookout for loose. If you notice any conditions that have the potential to cause injury or equipment damage, it is your responsibility to correct the problem immediately. That's not only common sense, that's the law. Housekeeping hazards, such as garbage and old materials left lying on the ground, should also be picked up and removed. Poor housekeeping can easily create slip and fall hazards if left unattended. Before entering any area that is the scene of a fresh blast, the lead wire should be disconnected from the central blasting system and the main line shorted out by tying the ends together. This safety practice eliminates any chance of an electrical energy hazard being present in conjunction with explosives.
Let's see what kind of mess they made for us today. Oh boy, look at that now. What are these guys ever going to learn, you know?
The second step in the 5-point safety system requires us to ask, is the workplace and equipment in good working order? Before any production work can be done, all substandard or unsafe conditions must first be corrected. A quick wash down of the area with a water hose immediately suppresses dust on the muck pile and surrounding back and walls. Remember, the first priority at the scene of the blast is ventilation. Inhaling air that may be contaminated with dust or after-blast gases can pose a serious danger to your health. The system must be restored in order to remove contaminants and provide plenty of fresh air to the working face.
All right, I'm going to turn it off now.
To begin with, turn the fan off and isolate the power source.
I want to lock this thing out here.
Next, fill out a tag and place it with a personal lock on the operating controls in accordance with your company's hazard control policy. If two people are working together, both should attach their own locks and tags to the controls.
There you go. Put your lock
This
on.
prevents any chance of an uncontrolled release of electrical energy to the fan. As a final precaution, try the startup button to verify that the operating controls cannot energize the fan. If the fan was to be turned on inadvertently while work is being conducted at the discharge end of the system, a serious accident could happen, such as an eye injury.
There we go. All right.
Once the new tubing has been replaced, turn the fan back on and, before returning, let the ventilation system flush out the heading. Dust is a major contaminant created by blasting operations. Water should always be applied in generous amounts to suppress the dust and wet down the immediate work area. By controlling dust at its source, air quality is not only improved in the immediate area, but also in those workplaces downstream in the ventilation circuit. The other condition to be on the lookout for is the presence of loose. In any newly blasted heading, it is always critical to check the back and walls for loose rock. Ground conditions are never exactly the same from one shift to another, especially in the vicinity of a fresh blast. Be on the lookout for small pieces of rock that have come to rest on the screen. They're often small enough to fall between the strands and are usually the ones that cause serious lacerations. Those few seconds it takes to spot a hazard and the few minutes it usually takes to correct a problem are well worth the effort when it comes to preventing personal injury or harm to others. The third step in the 5-point safety system is to ask yourself, am I working properly? And what about my partner? Are we both following proper job procedures and practices? Take scaling, for example, one of the most important jobs we do underground. In order to work safely, we must ask ourselves, is the scaling bar in good condition? Is it the proper length for the job? Am I taking a safe stance while I scale? Am I holding the bar properly to the side of my body? Have I established a safe path of retreat in case I have to move backward suddenly? Am I scaling from solid ground towards unchecked ground in a careful manner? The fourth step in the 5-point safety system involves doing an act of safety. The supervisor and the workers together should discuss a particular topic related to safety. Well, listen, fellas, let's take a few minutes and talk about an act of safety, eh? Now, today I'd like to talk about the lockout procedure. It's company policy.
It's an excellent opportunity to review proper practices and procedures, share experience and know-how, or talk about the problems and concerns of a specific workplace.
You know, every time I talk about lockout, I'm reminded of an accident we had here about 7 years ago on one of the conveyor belts. That's what got this whole lockout procedure started.
I remember that. That was old Sammy.
The act of safety is also a chance for the supervisor to explain exactly why certain practices or procedures are in place, instead of simply demanding that rules be followed.
During coffee break, he decided to shut the conveyor down and grease some of the idlers. Well, he had the guard off, and he was doing that when the belt attendant finished his coffee, came out of the lunchroom, and turned the power back onto the conveyor. See, nobody had told him that someone was working in the belt, and there wasn't any lock or tag on the electrical panel.
Well, the conveyor starts moving, see? And Sammy's coveralls gets caught in the roller. Pulled his arm right out of his socket. I'll tell you, the angels must have been looking down on them that day, I'll tell you. Because it's a miracle he's still alive.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it was. And after that accident, the company made a written lockout policy and made sure everyone had access to locks and tags. Now, whenever there's a danger of an energy hazard, we lock it out first before we do any work on it. And there's another thing I'd like to get everybody in the habit of doing. Once that panel's locked out, try the on switch just to double check that it isn't energized while you're working on it.
I always do that. I've been around long enough to know what can happen to you when that fan comes back on and you're at the other end. Almost lost an eye once.
Yeah, I saw you double checking that on switch. Now I can see why that's so important.
And let's not forget, all those locks need a tag with them. Every time we lock out, now company policy says you have to tag out the controls. And that tag has to have your name on it, the date, and the reason for locking out.
See, I used to think it was only electricians that had the lockout.
No, not anymore.
The act of
Anybody.
safety is clearly one of the most
Well, I'll let you
important
fellas get back
aspects
to
of the
work.
5-point safety system,
listen, after you finish
especially
up in
for the
here, you can go on up
supervisor.
the shop and pick up
It's
a
a
few
reminder and it's a
Head on up to
motivator
51.
to think about safety
Oh,
at
you
all
probably have to put a few
times.
rebar in there, too. Have a safe one, fellas.
The final step in the 5-point safety system asks us to consider, can and will I be able to continue working safely? In other words, do we have the ability and do we have the desire to continue to follow safe work practices and procedures once the supervisor leaves? Are we sufficiently knowledgeable and skilled to get the job done safely? Did we understand our job instructions clearly? And will our equipment and materials continue to be in good working order through to the end of the shift? It requires making a commitment to stay alert, keep on our toes, and not take unnecessary risks.
You know, you'll probably never find a workplace quite as unique as you will down here in an underground mine. It's dark, it's confined, there's a lot of heavy equipment being driven around on narrow roadways, and it's always subject to changing ground and ventilation conditions. That means in order to avoid accidents, we have to be constantly aware of the possibilities of injury at all times. That's what safety consciousness is all about, staying alert. But that's only part of it. Developing good safety habits takes the right mixture of knowledge, skills, and motivation. That's why using the 5-point safety system every day helps us put that all together. It's all about using common sense and not taking unnecessary risks. It's a system that forces you to ask yourself, what's the safest way for me to get this job done without getting hurt? Ask yourself that question every day, and I guarantee you'll get home to your family at the end of the shift in one piece, unharmed. Think about it. Is there really anything more important?